The desert didn't care about mercy. Its silence was heavy, swallowing sound and hope alike. The sun glared down on endless dunes of golden bone, and at the center of it all, one figure moved, crawling, dragging, bleeding. Captain Rhea Dalton, Delta Force, known to her brothers in arms as Delta, wasn't supposed to be alive. Her team had been ambushed during a covert extraction near the Afghan-Pakistani border. The Black Hawk that was meant to pull them out never came. The last thing she remembered before blacking out was the sound of rotors fading, the unmistakable panic in her comms as command ordered a retreat. They had left her behind. The heat pressed against her body like a weight, her lips split and dry, her combat suit torn. The sand stung the open wound across her shoulder, a gift from the shrapnel that had thrown her off her feet. She had a single pistol, 3 rounds, and a knife. No radio. No water. For any other soldier, it would have been over. But Delta didn't fear death. By the 3rd day, her hallucinations started, figures walking just out of reach, voices calling her call sign. She ignored them, focusing instead on the horizon. The mission hadn't ended. There were civilians to protect in the village they'd been sent to evacuate. Even dying didn't change that. When the first insurgent truck appeared in the distance, Rhea rolled behind a dune, heart pounding. She watched the men step out, rifles slung low, laughing as they scouted. They were searching for survivors, probably her. She gritted her teeth and waited until the nearest one wandered too close. With a silent burst of movement, she lunged, dragging him down into the sand, her knife slicing cleanly across his throat. The others didn't even notice the body drop. She took his canteen, his rifle, and the radio from his belt. The voice on the radio was scratchy, Arabic mixed with Pashto, but she caught fragments, talk of a nearby convoy heading toward the same village. She closed her eyes for a moment. The civilians. They were still alive. She didn't hesitate. By dusk, Rhea had patched herself with scraps of cloth, scavenged ammo, and started walking. She followed the convoy's tire tracks for miles until the horizon bled into night. Her body ached, but she pushed forward, muttering coordinates to herself, keeping her mind busy so she wouldn't drift into the dark. When she finally spotted the convoy, 3 technicals and a truck loaded with hostages, she crouched behind a ridge, breath steadying. No backup, no drones, no help coming, just her. Delta didn't need help. She used the moonlight as her ally. Crawling down the ridge, she set her first trap, an improvised explosive made from the insurgents' gear in her last grenade. She waited until one of the guards stepped close to investigate the sound she made, just enough of a click of metal to draw curiosity. The explosion tore through the first truck. Shouts echoed, bullets followed, lighting the dunes with chaos. Rhea moved like a ghost through the smoke, firing in controlled bursts, each shot deliberate. 2 men down. 3. When the dust cleared, only the driver of the last truck remained. He held a young boy in front of him, trembling, rifle pressed to the child's temple. Ray's vision swam, her limbs trembling from exhaustion, but her aim didn't waver. Let him go, she rasped, voice cracked from dehydration. The man sneered, shouting something she couldn't understand. He tightened his grip on the boy, daring her. Rhea took one slow breath and remembered her training, heart rate, wind, angle. Then she pulled the trigger. The bullet cut clean. The boy dropped to the sand, unharmed. When the last echo faded, she finally let herself fall to her knees. The boy looked at her in awe and fear. She motioned for him to stay behind her as she checked the truck. Inside were 6 more villagers, bound and terrified. She cut their restraints with shaking hands. The woman among them whispered something, Shuja. Warrior. Rhea smiled faintly. Delta, she corrected softly, before collapsing in the sand. Hours later, a drone from command finally spotted the smoke rising from the wrecked convoy. When the extraction team arrived, they were met by the sight of a half-dead woman standing guard over a group of survivors, rifle still raised. Holy hell, one of the medics muttered, recognizing her face. That's Dalton. She's alive. They rushed to her, but she refused to let go of her weapon until every civilian was loaded onto the chopper. Only then did she sink into the medic's arms. When she woke in the field hospital, the air was cool and sterile. Her CO stood beside the bed, Colonel Pierce, his expression unreadable. You were listed Kia, he said quietly. Command assumed you were gone. We pulled the team after losing contact. She didn't respond, just stared at the IV in her arm. You saved those people, he continued. Single-handedly took down a convoy. They're calling it a miracle. Rhea looked up at him finally, her eyes like steel. It wasn't a miracle, she said. It was duty. Pierce nodded slowly. Still, Delta doesn't fear death, huh? Her lips twitched in the faintest ghost of a smile. Death fears Delta. Word spread fast. In the weeks that followed, every operator in the region heard about the woman who survived the desert alone, who fought without backup, who refused to die until her mission was complete. They said she was more than a soldier, she was a storm, a force carved by fire and loss. But behind the legend, Rhea carried the quiet truth. In the desert, she had seen death, not as an enemy, but as a companion that walked beside her. The only reason she kept walking was because someone needed her to. Months later, when command held a debrief in D.C., Rhea stood before a room full of generals who wanted to understand how one operator could survive where teams had perished. I didn't survive, she said simply. I adapted. A murmur swept the room. You left me to die, she continued. But Delta Force doesn't measure survival in days. We measure it in purpose. As long as I had one, I wasn't done. One general leaned forward. And what's your purpose now, Captain Dalton? Rhea looked out the window, where the afternoon sun blazed against the Potomac. To remind every soldier who comes after me that fear is a choice. And Delta doesn't choose it. The room fell silent. Outside, reporters waited to catch a glimpse of the woman whose story had already turned into legend, the one who defied death and the desert alike. But Rhea didn't care about cameras or headlines. As she stepped into the light, she thought only of the faces of the villagers, the sound of the boys' laughter on the chopper, and the endless horizon that had tried to claim her. She walked on without looking back. Because in the states of history, some names were carved by time. Others, like Delta's, were burned into it forever.